Afternoon. Thank you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. It is Sunday, July 20th, 2025. So I have a piece for you on spiritual warfare, since it is Sunday. And this particular thing I'm reading from is the book on Elder Joseph, the Hesychast. It's actually written by Elder Ephraim from Arizona, because he was one of his disciples. And so Elder Joseph of Hesychast is actually a saint. He was declared a saint, canonized a saint, several years ago. And so I'm going to share a few battles with the demons, which is what spiritual warfare really is. But temptations, things like that. I'm going to share some stories about that Saint Joseph went through, because I found them quite amazing. Now, there's several in here, but I'm just going with this for right now because I just read it this morning. So, as you know, that's part of being a Christian, is you have to deal with temptations that the enemy puts in your thoughts and your mind, and that you can't let it land, as St. Paisios says. The best thing you can do is brush it off and not entertain any of them. So we try very hard, and we fall and we get back up, because it's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong struggle. Although some people get through their certain passions, sins that they do, they overcome certain ones, and then other ones are tougher. And then sometimes when they get rid of one, another passion takes over, or a sin takes over. So I'm going to read you a little bit about him. He's from Greece, St. Joseph. He was on the Holy Mountain, Mount Athos. I can't remember when he passed. I want to say 2000, somewhere in the early 2000s, I think he reposed. So, one winter night, Yerunda and Father Arsenios is a priest who had more of a simple, he was a simple priest. He had more of a simpleton, as they call it, but really a simple view of everything. He wasn't as profound in his thoughts. He didn't have that kind of education. But in any case, he's about 10 years older than Elder Joseph, and they became brothers, companions throughout their lives. In fact, for 40 years, Father Arsenios was traveling and working through asceticism with Saint Joseph. So it's quite wonderful and remarkable at the same time. So we're going to read from here. One winter night, Yerunda and Father Arsenios were in their hut up in St. Basil's Skeet. This is on Holy Mountain. While a snowstorm raged outside. The wind was howling fiercely, and the cold pierced them to the bone. Even so, they followed their program and struggled with their vigil. The remembrance of death, tears of repentance, thousands of prostrations, and primarily noetic prayer. This did not please the jealous devil at all. So he raised a series of attacks against Yerunda. Yerunda means elder. It's a respectful name for an elder. With thoughts, fantasies, distractions, noises, threats, and anything else he could think of. He tried 3 or 4 times to ruin Yerunda's vigil, but all his attacks failed, because by then Yerunda was an experienced fighter. Finally, the devil became so infuriated with him that he entered through the door in the form of a violent burst of wind. He threw the door aside and then lifted the roof into the air. Yerunda remained thunderstruck in his hut, watching the roof with tons of rock on top of it flying through the air like a glider. There had been strong winds before, but what happened that night was not just a strong gust of wind, but a demon. The roof crashed onto the rocks on the other side of a ravine, and the remains of their roof became a pitiful sight on top of the snow. As a result, the two ascetics ended up being exposed to the snowstorm. Despite this, they still didn't end their vigil. What did they do to keep from freezing? They did prostrations all night long. And prostrations, if you don't know what that means, is that you cross yourself and you bend over, and then you end up on your knees with your forehead to the floor. Then you get back up and you do that same motion. So they were doing that all night. It would be thousands of prostrations. When a monk came the next morning and found them with snow in their cells and even in their beards, perplexed, he asked, "What happened here?" "My child," Elder Joseph replied, "don't trust in man, trust in God." Another time, Yerunda was keeping vigil, saying the prayer, and a demon appeared before him. Apparently, the demon's intent was to start beating him up, but Yerunda was so brave and had so much fury against the demons that he immediately charged at him to crush him. After wrestling a little with the demon, Yerunda managed to get a good hold of him, and then he called out to Father Arsenios, "Arsenios, bring some fire so that we can burn him. Now that I've got him, he's not getting away." But while Father Arsenios was trying to light a fire, the demon transformed himself into a crow and flew away. And these stories may sound trivial, but only people who have experienced tangible demonic assaults can fully appreciate Elder Joseph's courage and bravery. Saint Seraphim of Seraph, who had experienced numerous demonic appearances, found it sufficient merely to say about them they are atrocious, and realized that the aerial realm is full of demons. It has angels, but there's demons there, and people need to realize that's there. And you don't ever want to do what's going on that Elder Joseph is doing. He had practice with this. He had the strength through God and the Theotokos. But us average people don't ever try to fight or in any way do anything with demons. All you need to do is call on the name of the Lord, say the Jesus prayer, the Lord's Prayer, ask for God's help, and they flee at the name of God. So just don't do what he's doing. I'm just giving you an example of this great saint and how he lived. It's like St. Anthony too. He went through that all his life. During their blessed life at St. Basil's Skeet, Yerunda's demonic warfare continued relentlessly. One day, Mr. Soterius, I guess is how you say it, I don't know I don't know how to say his last name, came from the world to see him. Up there in those abrupt precipices, however, they didn't have any place for him to stay. So Yerunda had him sleep in his own cell while he went to their little chapel to do his vigil. That evening, the demons came to Yerunda's cell as usual. When they started beating the visitor, he started screaming. The man was horrified. He almost lost his mind. I'm sure I'd feel that way too. As soon as Yerunda and Father Arsenios heard the screams, they came running and asked him, "What's wrong?" "The demons nearly strangled me," he said. "They almost beat me to death." Indeed, he was black and blue from their hits. "Don't be afraid," Yerunda told him. "They won't hit you again. Every evening they beat me. But tonight they thrashed you by mistake." I'm sorry to laugh, but it just sounds funny. "Oh, every night I get beaten by the demons. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it. It was you by mistake. It's not going to happen again." The visitor fell at Yerunda's feet in tears and begged him, "Take me back to St. Anne's quickly. I can't stay here anymore." Yerunda told him cheerful things to calm him down, but it was impossible. He could not, he could not stay in the place of martyrdom. He was terrified and kept looking left and right, begging to leave. So in the middle of the night, Yerunda led him through the ravine back to St. Anne's. Yeah. People who go through these things and they're used to fighting, and when you get the closer you get to God, the more this happens, because the evil one doesn't want people to be dedicated to God. The evil one wants to ruin wants men to go astray. He doesn't want them to be close to God. So they do these kind of things to these people. They get really close to God, and they continuously are praying and doing all these things that St. Joseph did. Now, at the onset of their ascetical life, both Yerunda and Father Asinius were frequently tormented by the demons, but it was primarily Yerunda who was beaten up because it was his prayer that really burned them. They didn't attack Father Asinius so much, partly because he was not on the same level as Yerunda, but especially because he was a disciple. When a disciple is properly obedient and confesses frankly, he eliminates the demon's right to attack him. Yerunda, on the other hand, had an unending struggle throughout his entire life. Years later, he wrote to someone. This is what he said. I have been furiously and bloodily wrestling with the demons for more than 25 years in this world. I have descended to the bottom of the sea, devoid of any complacency and self-will, in order to find the pearl of great price. I conquered Satan himself, along with all his army, skill, and cunning. Having shackled him through humility, I asked him, why do you have so much rage toward us and fight us with so much fury? And he answered, so that I may have many companions in Hades and brag to the Nazarene. He's talking about Christ. I am not the only transgressor, so see how many others are with me. Then once again I ascended to the heavens through grace and spiritual theoria, and saw the ineffable beauty of paradise, which God had prepared for them that love him. And after all this, grace was lifted away a little, and my feet were well nigh shaken. Then I fell into a little negligence, and sleep took me captive and deprived me of many blessings. Shortly thereafter I rose once again and waged war in a bloody battle, but after I won I fell into drowsiness, and once more negligence, the mother of every evil, began to eat away at my bones. Yet once again I rose and waged war against all the spirits, which is the monk's life, basically, is what he says later. So, he says his temptations were so severe that many times he told us, if I describe to you my struggles with temptations, you will not be able to bear it, because my entire life has been a martyrdom. But the goodness of God and Our Lady the Theotokos, who always protected me, gave me a kind of persistence and toughness, so that I would not yield. In difficult times, what really helps and saves you is tears, and everything depends on the goodness of God. During his great trials, Yerunda experienced the grace of God tangibly. This was because God's response is proportional to the magnitude of the temptation that one bears for his love. Important part here. When a person works for God with very good intentions, it is not possible that God will let him be tempted beyond his strength. Furthermore, his reward from God will also correspond to the magnitude of the temptation. This is why Yerunda wrote, don't be surprised, this is how a monk is. The life of a monk is a continuous martyrdom. Our sweet Jesus reveals himself through afflictions. As St. Isaac the Syrian says, God does not grant a great gift without a great trial. And St. Isaac, one of my favorite saints, he also warns us, but if a man's soul has an infirmity and has not strength enough for great temptations, and she therefore asks that she should not enter into them, and God hearkens to her, then know for a certainty that inasmuch as the soul is insufficient for great trials, in the same measure is she insufficient for great gifts. And insofar as great temptations are prevented from entering upon the soul, to the same degree great gifts are withheld from her. So he rounds out the answer to that as Elder Ephraim says, this means that whoever wants to experience great grace from God must be patient with temptations. He must hold the battlefront with trust in God. Yes, there's so much more I could read to you, but it's, there is one other thing I want to say that I think is an important quote that really resonates with me. And he says, he used to say, Yerunda, St. Joseph, the struggle against self-love is hard, but everything is accomplished with the grace of God. If a person, especially a beginner, is not strict with himself, cowardice and self-love take the wind out of his sails. And if a person does not jump into the sea of temptations with faith and without hesitating, he will not find tangible help from God and thus will not make even one step of progress. Very important stuff here. And I just wanted to share that. There's wonderful things in here also, but I just wanted to share at least that portion for you. He's an amazing saint. And Hesychast, I believe, some Orthodox can correct me, but I believe hesychast means silence, doing much in silence. But you all can check me on that if I'm not correct. In any case, I wanted to share that. I just thought it was an amazing read, and I think people need to understand that. As I talked about what happens when people, as I've read from the saints, what happens when people leave this earth. Their souls leave the earth. They do have to deal with whatever vices, basically sins that they struggled with and haven't confessed for. It's very hard because the demons will be testing you that one last time, and before you go to a place of a taste of heaven or hell, which, by the way, to me is the same thing, as I said, because Saint Isaac the Syrian says, God's love feels like burning and torment, while if you do not accept him or don't believe in him and don't love him, but if you've loved and dedicated your life to God and been a faithful servant, and we all want to try to be that way, then his love feels like warmth, comfort, joy. So I think that's what I want to say. And like I said, all of this is high place saints and who worked up to that, monks and there's nuns too, that we who aren't in that level should not try to attempt or shouldn't try to attempt that at this time and to just call on Christ's name. Okay, so I hope you got something out of that. I hope you found it was beneficial and interesting. These are true stories. These are of the saints. It's not, some fun, simple folklore or myth or story. It's some people think, even people of certain Christian sects who don't have the saints in their lives. But yeah, these are real testimonies, real experiences. And that's why you have to be careful. I'll say one more thing. You have to be careful. In, for instance, Kim Iverson show. She had a special guy on the other day. I can't remember his name. I think it was Darius something. And when I was listening to him, it reminded me of the 1990s New Age era. And this is a false idol. I mean, a false god. It's an idol. It's dangerous. When you try to do things in the aerial realm, that's where the demons get you, and they deceive you. They deceive you and come in all shapes and forms, as you saw. That it reminds me of shapeshifters. You hear about these new ways of saying in books and movies, but that's what happens with demons. They can form into anything. So they can form into angels, and then people who aren't discerning enough will think that it's a real angel, but it's not. It's a demon. So best to be very careful with what you dabble in, especially in the occult and things like that. It's very dangerous. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back with another little bit I want to share on this Sunday segment. It'll be another section to this, a different one, but on St. Paul's epistles. There's something there that's really interesting to me, so I will share that with you in the next video. Thanks again for your watching and for your support, all your nice comments I've read. I read all of them. Thanks so much. Until next time.